that was old news. It was nothing but a business thing. How many newspapers can you get into?
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Dankin. Welcome back to another edition of Becoming the King of Pot. With me, as always, is my ex-criminal cousin, Bruce Perlowin, also known as the King of Pot. Bruce, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm an ex-criminal, not a criminal.
I know. I kind of alternate that week to week because it all depends on how your week was, because I know what you're doing now. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, so we're going to pick up where we left off last week. We were talking about your education process in the prison system. We're in Pleasanton Co-ed Federal Prison up in Dublin, California. And then we're going to talk about you getting released from prison and that whole process, and then what you used your smarts to do. But before we do that, please like, share, and subscribe right here on the Becoming the King of Pot channel. It helps us here at Becoming the King of Pot with our quest. So wake the neighbors and tell them to subscribe also. So, Bruce, you are working in your prison life right now. You're working, you're living, you're exercising, you have a girlfriend, but really your focus is getting your education and going to school. You showed up there wanting to get 3 PhDs, right? Which is not very easy to do, but you sort of mapped it out, and you're through your associate's degree, you're through your bachelor's degree. Now take us through now the master's program and what it was like.
First of all, it was, to remind the audience, I was in a co-ed prison where there was men and women together, and I walked around holding hands with my girlfriend, who was Svetlana Ogorodnikova, a Russian spy. And I often say my best friends were spies, assassins, terrorists, hijackers, jewel thieves, bank robbers, smugglers, and that was just the women. So that was the environment I was in, and we went to school a lot. There was a lot of amazing stories. The kind of person that ends up in prison, first of all, as I mentioned last episode, I made a list one time of all the people throughout history, like Nelson Mandela and so, this one, this one, this one. You'd be shocked at how many people were actually famous people were actually in prison. I said, well, this is a pretty cool list. These are some amazing people, as were the people I was in with then. There were some pretty amazing personalities there. So I was enjoying learning from them, studying them. We're in a closed environment yet, so you're in a microcosm of the world. And I was always experimenting with doing bizarre things and seeing how that would reverberate throughout this microcosm of this community of people. So anyway, so we have this, my big thing was studying, learn, grow, and study. It was an unprecedented opportunity of a lifetime to learn, grow, and study. I would work out, I would read, I would, write. And I remember, and I would walk the track. So I would be getting sun, I would be walking and read at the same time. So I go, this is great. I'm doing 3 things at once. And I kept the time management study of everything I did to make sure I stayed on my routine. And it was a very, very fascinating thing. But we had some very funny stories happen.
Well, tell us one.
Okay, let me look at my list here. Okay,
Funny story number 1.
Yeah, I'm reading all the smuggling books, and they're all telling us how they all ended up in prison, right? And they're telling us some of the stories about smuggling drugs and how they did as much drugs in prison as they did out drugs. We didn't smuggle drugs in prison. Maybe some people did. We smuggled perfume, jewelry. So for the women, for our girlfriends.
Yeah.
And Craig told me recently, Craig the dock master, when he came to visit me, I had him take a bag and throw it over the fence, and inside that bag, so I could get it. Inside that bag he didn't throw it over the fence. He hid it outside the prison in a certain spot, and then there was a group of inmates that were allowed to go outside the gates, the fences, and work out there, landscaping and stuff. People that didn't have very much time left. So he hid it in a spot. It was a shaver, it was perfume, it was jewelry. You know, and, I think it was a beeper or a cell phone. I'm not sure if they even had cell phones back then. I don't think so, but there was
No,
something kinda
no.
communication device, and that was it. But a guard unfortunately, a guard found that and, caught it, so I never got the jewelry and perfume to give to my girlfriend, Svetlana. Uh,
Damn it.
yeah, but no drugs, not heroin, not cocaine, not, what do you call it, marijuana. Alright, so that's a
So
little
what was the funny part of that story?
the funny part of it is that you're smuggling in perfume and jewelry and not who think about smuggling in perfume into a prison, you know? But that was a big deal. I mean, it was a really big deal. The girls always all wanted perfume, you know? I
That's
guess
funny.
it's a thing, you know? I mean, I have a 17-year-old stepdaughter, and she walks through the house, she's just reeking of perfume, you know? I guess it's a real girl thing, you know? As a guy, we never think of that much. Um, Another thing is I was there did I talk about the helicopter escape in any of the previous episodes? If
I don't recall the helicopter escape.
okay, so here's what's happened. Um, this guy Me and Lana are sitting at lunch, and we're outside the chow hall. You know, outside the chow hall, they had a little bench area, a place where the picnic tables were, and that's where you could sit. And, you know, there's 10 picnic tables on this patio area. So we're sitting there having our lunch, and all of a sudden now, that patio area faces the men's unit where me and Joe Jogger had our dorm. I and then outside behind that is the field, the outside rec area. So it's lunchtime, so a lot of people, inmates are outside in the outside rec area. There's a baseball thing, that walking track I just mentioned, um, tennis courts out there, basketball courts. So we're out there, and all of a sudden, we see this helicopter coming really, really low behind the building towards the rec area, and we're sitting there watching it, and now this is unusually low, and all of a sudden, it dips down and disappears, we from our view, from the, 'cause the men's unit, blocked it, and all of a sudden, it takes off again, and we see it again flying up over the men's unit and away, and you hear this roar of applause and cheering from outside you know, the outside, rec area just come
Right.
rolling in, and at that point, we knew exactly what happened. Someone had came in and escaped in a helicopter, so we all stood up
Wow.
and clapped, alright? And it was hysterical, and it was so funny because there was 2 guards. Now, keep in mind, we're in this patio area outside the chow hall, and in front of that area is a big yard, a big grassy area, and then another grass area before the units in the outside rec area, and 2 guards were running towards each other, one from this angle, one from this angle, and they're looking up at the helicopter, you know, which is up over there flying, and they're not looking. They crashed into it. They were hit a puddle. There was actually a puddle because it had rained, and they crashed into each other, fell into the puddle. That was hysterical. It was like the Keystone Cops. Nobody shot at the
Sure.
helicopter. Nobody had a time to respond, and what had happened is, and it's very famous, escape, is this guy had gotten out on parole, and he was, you know, he got out of prison. He was a helicopter pilot, came back, and, you know, people notice Day and Mikey, they were walking the track. They were 2 of my friends, and they were a couple, and that helicopter came within 20 feet of them, you know, so when we have 1 or both of them on, they'll hopefully tell that story, and, but anyways, she was wearing a red jumpsuit because Lana noticed that. She goes, "Yeah, I noticed she was usually wearing a red jumpsuit for 3 days in a row. She had been out on the track at a certain spot in a red jumpsuit, and that's how the helicopter pilot, her boyfriend, identified her. He landed, pulled her into the helicopter, and they made good their escape. They found the helicopter later that day or the next day inside an area that was very, very hard to land a helicopter. He was really, really good, and they had disappeared. Unfortunately, to all of our sorrow and, you know, they got caught later just doing a stupid thing. They had
Oh,
a
that's a bummer.
Yeah, they had a great escape plan. They were gonna get a boat. They're gonna get a boat that he had and going up to Canada. Well, again, the jewelry, the women, he had gotten a ring, wedding ring, and he had it sized at a jeweler using the same name that he used to rent the helicopter. By the way, when he rented the helicopter, what he did, he flew up in the helicopter, pulled a gun on the guy, and said, "Land this helicopter and get off." So the chopper pilot had to get off, and then he took the helicopter and left. So now,
Oh,
meanwhile, they
wow.
reported the stolen helicopter in this name. That was the same name that the jeweler somehow, I don't know how the jeweler knew that name. They put an all points bulletin board out, and he said, "Oh, this is the name they're looking for." Alerted the authorities. When he came back the next day or 2 days later to pick up the ring, that's when they arrested him, and I guess she was outside in the car, or they arrested
Right.
her
Isn't that
later.
one of the ways that you were caught too? Because you had something in your name, and 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 the cops were looking for it.
No. No, I got arrested because of, my partners, Fred and Ed Shore, rolled over and gave them all
Right.
the loads,
Right. That's
and
what. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
guys that laundered my money in Florida, they rolled over, gave them all the information. The captain at sea got busted. He rolled over and
Right.
gave them all the
Right.
it was all snitches giving them the information and just explaining to them what happened, in the
Got it.
organization. Alright, so
Got
that
it.
was an interesting
All
another
right.
s
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to get back to the education side of things. I want to get to, like, you're working on your master's degree, and what is that like? Is it a normal master's program? What's it like doing this in prison? And what's the classroom dynamic at this point?
Well, the master's degree was through correspondence, so that was all you buy a bunch of books, you pay your tuition, you buy books, they send you the books, you read the books, you take the test. So that and then you do what is it called? A master's dissertation thesis, a master's thesis, and then
Yeah,
the PhD is a dissertation. That's hard. That is a lot of research, a lot of work. I mean, it is grueling, and it's not easy to do. And again,
yeah. And
my
you're doing it with a pencil, not a not a computer. Yeah,
Right, and you don't have Google or any of that stuff to look up some stuff. You gotta read it, research it, write it down. So, but it was incredibly informative and packed a ton of information and knowledge into my brain. So I really
sure.
liked learning.
Now these correspondence courses, is this something you did in your cell? You went to the library? What was that like?
I mostly did those in my room, you know?
Hmm.
I it was all done in my room. Now, when you're right, you had a desk in your room as well. I may
Yeah,
have written in the library, or I may have written downstairs. There was tables downstairs, um, but it probably most of it was done in my room, I would guess. But, I take it back. I told you earlier that I learned computer technology. We did have a WordPress, a Word document,
word
Word, I think it
processor.
was called
A
back
word
then.
processor, they were called. Word
Yeah.
processors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because I have my thesis here, and it is done. I hand wrote it all out, then I took it into the education room and then typed it all out. So and then
Got it.
printed it. So I do have
Yeah,
a
so in
typed version.
1986 or 7, I was the talent coordinator for over at Dick Clark Productions for a TV show called Putting on the Hits, and that's when I got my first computer. I was like, "What's that?" And it was like it was the keyboard connected to the monitor, right? It was a Radio Shack TRS-80, right? Remember Radio Shack?
And I remember the
Um
TRS-80 too.
Yeah, 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 with the big floppy disk. So
Yeah,
this is about the same time, so that's kinda what you were working on back then?
yeah, a big square box, and,
Yeah, yeah.
and I didn't know how to type. I had to learn how to type, and Day actually taught me how to type the right way. 'Cause she was always taking classes as well. Um,
Yeah, I learned how to type. I was working at a radio station in the promo department, and my boss came up to me and he goes, "Do you know how to type?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Okay, good, type this." And, that's how I learned to type.
so a couple other things you learn in prison, um, outside of school is Svetlana. She told me couple things she told me, if you ever get robbed, you're ever being robbed, always say to the person, when they ask for your wallet or your money, say, "No problem." And that actually happened in real life. Years later, I remembered that my whole life. And she also told me whenever you get in a seat with somebody, you never, ever sit in the front seat, let someone sit behind you. So our whole lives together after prison, nobody ever sat behind me in a car, ever. And
That's
of
funny.
course, that's spies technology. That really happened with the Colombians, with me and with Craig. They said, "You sit in the front seat." They were in the back with a gun. If they didn't believe our story, they were going to shoot us. So she knew all that stuff. The other thing she taught me was whenever you're in a restaurant, she would watch the waiter deliver the food to her plate. She always was watching that kitchen in case somebody poisoned the food. So these are all interesting things that I don't know if
So
everybody on the planet needs to learn that, but I did learn that in prison separate from college. You
right,
learn from a
right.
highly trained Russian spy some spy tricks. She never taught me how to pick a
Sure.
lock, just my niece.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so another thing
So
happened. One more
okay.
prison story. All right.
Sure.
So you got these when you go to lunch, breakfast, and dinner, and you line up at the chow hall. So there's this long, long line, and everybody's in line. And a couple of things. One, if Mikey and I are fighting because they're not standing together in line, okay? Or if me and Lana are fighting, everyone in the compound knows because we're not standing together in line. So that was one thing you learned um, about human relationships. You knew instantly who was fighting. Um, but somebody would every once in a while, not every once in a while, often someone would butt in line. Now that's a big, serious infraction. That's a total disrespect, and that's fisticuffs. That's we're gonna go punch this guy
Butting in
out.
line is fisticuffs, huh?
Yes, that's very dangerous. So I ignored all that stuff, but Lana, little 5 foot Lana, 5'1", she said, "That guy butted in line. Who's that guy? He's a 6'5", big, buffed out, heavyweight lifting weightlifting champion butting in line in front of everybody else." And she'd go walking up there, look up, say, "Why are you butting line?" with her Russian accent. "You think you're better than everyone else?" And she would just tear into this guy. And of course, I can't just let her do it alone. I got to go up and back her up. So I got to walk up and stand behind her. And then this guy, am I going to get in a fight with this guy or what's he going to do? And so this happened over and over again. So finally I go, I got to solve this problem. So I made a survey. I'm taking sociology classes, right? So, and so I made
So is
this
this a school project or you just did this on your own?
I turned it into a school project, okay, for sociology. So this is a document that I made up, and I still have a copy of it. It's a questionnaire for sociology class, and it's titled Sociological Study on Reasons Individuals Butt in Line. So I made this a class project. And I'm going to read some of this. It'll take a second, but it's fun. Remember, this is aggressive, passive conflict resolution. That was another part of it. This is conflict resolution, okay? Another part of sociology. The following survey is part of a sociological study being conducted to determine the underlying motives and subjective experiences, as well as objective observations of individuals who butt in the chow line. Please check one or more of the reasons you as an individual or part of a group butt in line. If you do not butt in line, please mark the reasons you think others do behave this way. So now they have a choice. I do butt in line, and you answer yes, or I do not butt in line. Answer why you think others do. And then you have a questions 1 through 15. So I'll read a few of these real quick. Number 1, because I think I'm better than all the other inmates waiting in line. 2, because I have no respect for other inmates. 3, because I have no respect for myself. 4, because I never developed out of the egocentric stage of childhood development and don't realize yet that the world doesn't revolve around me and my own needs. 5, because I never grew past the pre-conventional stages of moral development during my adolescence and have no idea that I'm doing anything wrong. So these are all things that we're studying. What is egocentric stage of childhood development? All right. That's in my sociology or communication class or cognitive development class. because I never grew past the pre-conventional stage of moral development during my adolescence. I read that. 6, because I'm hypoglycemic, and before meals, my cerebral cortex has ceased functioning, so I can't think properly. That's from nutrition classes.
Where did you come up with these possible answers? I
Uh,
mean, what
I'm smart.
were you think
I'm studying all this stuff, and I'm weaving these questions into this. And I know that
Right.
half of them don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but some of them do because you'll hear a couple other cute ones. 7, because I don't know what you're talking about. I just couldn't care less about anybody else but myself. 8, because I'm psychologically disturbed and need to be in a mental hospital. Now, that's a choice. So here's this big guy butting
Right,
in line,
right,
and he's
right.
saying, "Well, maybe this is interesting." 9, because I have my head, you know where, and I don't know what's going on around me. 10, because I'm so hungry, I don't have the self-control to wait in line. 11, because I'm basically just a rude, crude, disrespectful human being. 12, because I'm an institutional snitch, and I know if the guards see me, they won't say anything to me because of my special agreement with them. So now he's saying, "Well, if I butt in line, maybe everybody's thinking I'm a snitch, besides an idiot." 13, because I think
Right.
I'm the king or queen of the universe and I shouldn't have to be subject to standing in line with inmates. 14, because I'm trying to prove to everyone that I'm a moron and I know that butting in line is moronic behavior. So I'm calling him a moron without calling him a moron. 15, because I'm just trying to prove to everyone that I am a jerk and I know that butting in line is something jerks do. All right. So they would read this. I'd say, "Well, could you please fill this out? I'm doing a study for a sociology class." And they'd start reading it, and I'd go back to my spot in line, and they would just go, "Oh my God." And they would put the paper down and go to the back of the line. And
What was the most common answer?
they would come up and say, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I was doing." And they would never check anything. They knew they
Oh, funny,
knew
right.
what it was all about. They weren't that dumb.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
and the funny thing is, though, Todd, that would last about 3 weeks, and then it's budding a line again.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
So, th
Maybe
and
they'll forget. Right.
I mean, that part I found fascinating because they really got it. You read those answers and you really realize you're one of those 15 things
Yeah,
or
yeah,
more.
yeah.
So they got it,
Alright,
and it
so so
created
s
I didn't have to get in a fight with them because I couldn't let her stand there by
yeah,
herself yelling at this guy. I had to back her
sure.
up.
So let's talk about, we're in the late '80s now. You're starting to reach all of your educational goals, and at this point, you got to start thinking about getting out, right? I mean, you're a couple years away from getting out. What's your mindset at this point?
My mindset is when I get out, I'm gonna promote our merch, this beautiful mug called Becoming the King of Pot or our hat. So, I'm a marketing guy. So I am thinking about getting out, and I'll talk about that in a second. And I'm thinking
But first, please go to www.becomingtkop.com and get your merch.
actually, it's very, very cool merch. You aced the logo. It's a great logo. We got hats, we got mugs, we got all kinds of cool merch. Alright, so
Stash bags.
that's right. And remember, the reason I'm in prison is outlined in these 2 books, Riding the Tide by Cecil Rogers and The Golden Gate Smuggling Company by Brett Douglas. You wanna buy those. This is the
And if
best
you'd
one.
like to buy this pen, please go to
Okay. Alright, so I'm thinking I'm getting out of prison, and I'm not gonna be able to hide my past, nor do I want to. I figure I do not wanna work for anyone that isn't acutely aware of my background, because if I do, and they find out about it 3 months in, 6 months in, they're gonna fire me. "You never told us about this," and I just didn't care enough to work for a straight guy who didn't acknowledge or know my background. So what I did is I took all these newspaper articles that I had saved up, and there was literally hundreds of newspaper articles about me over the years Now this is over the years is, close to 9 years at this point, alright? And I just took the
Right, so
coats.
so you're in your last year, your last 2 years. I mean, when do you find out, first of all, that you're getting out? I mean, is there a or is it a surprise? They come to you at year 9 and say, "Hey, we're letting you out for good behavior."
No, you have, reviews, so you're always going to I don't know if it's once a month, once every 6 months, um, if you're on parole, if you could get parole, you gotta go in front of the parole board and plead your case is that you're rehabilitated, why you should get out early, and they very punitive. They, most of the time say no. But I was CCE. I was 10 years and then I had 15 year sentence, and back then, you did 2/3 of your time. So I had a defined date. It's called your release date. And you could
Got
get
it.
some extra good time and whittle that away by a few months, but you pretty much know the exact date you're getting out, because I was no parole. On my 15-year sentence, I did have parole, but they maxed me out. They didn't give me any,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Alright, so we're coming to the end. You got a year left, and, tell us what's happening.
Alright, so I've gone from
Because that's a
Pleasant.
big preparation, right? I mean, you know you're getting out. You wanna finish your education. You wanna get ready for the outside world. Tell us what's happening in your world.
Keep in mind, everything that happens to me in life I find amazing. I think, everything is like, "Wow, this is cool. I'm in prison. Wow, this is cool. I can read all the books to my heart's content. Wow, this is cool." Another thing about prison is when you go away for a weekend today, anybody that goes away for a weekend vacation, you think about your life, you know? You reflect on it. When you go away for a 2-week vacation, which is still somewhat normal, you reflect on your life and you think about it. It's not like going away for 2 years and reflecting. You don't forget things. You don't forget anything that happened, but you think about it and you reflect on it. Well, reflecting on 2 years, for 4 years, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you really drill down to your life, what you did that you like, what you did that you would have changed, what you did that was not quite moral or ethical, what you did that was moral and ethical. You review everything. So you got all that in your head, and it's all an adventure. To me, life is an incredible, amazing adventure. I so I'm now soon going to start a new chapter in that adventure. So I go from Pleasanton to Lexington because they took the men out of Pleasanton and made it all single sex. Um, of all the women, and Lexington was still co-ed. Lana gets herself transferred to Pleasanton, so we spend another maybe 8 months together before they're going to release me, but to release me, they sent me to Milan, Michigan, which is, at that time, a minimum security prison, which you go from if you're a start off at max, you go from max to medium to, low medium to minimum to a camp, and then they release you. I
And
for some
how do you get from state to state? Do you fly, or you on a bus, or how's that work?
A bus, usually a bus. Unless it's across country, then they take you on this big plane. When we went from Pleasanton to Lexington, they took us on a big plane, an airplane, and, that's hysterical. I forgot this one story. The story is when you're in jail with women, you get used to it. You're getting around women, but some guys aren't used to some guys have been around other guys for 5 years, and then they come to Pleasanton, they're scared shitless. The woman's they don't know how to act, they don't know how to eat, they don't know how to dress. There's this one guy, they called him Antenna because he had antennas. His hair was a big black muscle guy, wore ripped up shirt, ripped up pants, dressed like a slob, had antennas sticking out of his head like that, so we called him Antenna. Alright, he did come out of his room for 3 days, but when he came out, there was no more antennas, his hair was slicked back, he had ironed his clothes, he was really slick. So people, you have to adjust, so just like getting out, I have to adjust to the real world, you know? You
Sure.
forgot. I remember when I got out, when I went out to eat with a group that had hired me, they put their napkins on their lap in a restaurant. I go, "Oh, yeah. That's right, people do that. They put their napkins." You forget a lot of the social
Yeah,
nuances. Right.
sure. That
Being a
makes
co-ed
sense.
person, you remember a lot of them because 'cause you're around women, but in general, everything is new. You gotta read it. Why do they do that? You
Yeah.
actually I de-linked from society, alright? When you're that gone that long, you de-link from society. I never wanted to relink. To this day, I have not relinked to
Interesting.
society. I've had
Yeah,
my
yeah.
I've had as you know, I've had my own businesses, I've run them myself, they've been wildly successful in a lot of different areas, we'll go into that later, but I never linked back into Ozzie and Harriet, Imma be like everybody else. It's just
Yeah.
not it's
No, you
just
never did.
no. I always
Right,
like if
right.
it's not unusual or different, I don't wanna do it, you know? So I'm
Yeah,
always looking for
yeah.
creative, new, visionary things to do. Alright, so that in mind, I'm now in
So you're a short timer. You got a
right.
year left. What's happening?
I'm in Milan, Michigan, and I get all these newspaper articles, so I say, "Okay, I'm gonna make a resume, and I'm going to" oh, no, I didn't do it. I got out. Yeah, I got out of prison, out of Milan, and I went to a halfway house in San Francisco, so I'm living in a friend's basement, because I didn't have you have no money. Alright, so this guy was Becky's ex-husband. He was raising my son Reese, and he was very close to Reese, and so we befriended each other. So they're divorced, but I'm still friends with him, and so I'm living at his house, and so I make this resume. I get all the things I quote all the things that the newspaper said about me over the years, and this is the document I made up. I'm holding up a document that's titled "Ex-Marijuana Kingpin Needs Job." I
I
and
love that title. Wait, hold that up. Ex-marijuana kingpin needs a job. That's awesome. That must have been very strangely but uniquely received.
Yeah, it was yeah, I'm gonna tell you the resume story, it's very interesting. So
Please.
some of the quotes so I start off with, a quote, "Rather than wait years to move up through the corporate ranks, Bruce Pearlman parlayed a knack for organization into the largest drug smuggling operation in West Coast history. Between 1979 and 1983, he smuggled $500 million worth of marijuana into California, nearly 200 tons. He managed a fleet of boats larger than most countries' navies, hundreds of employees, including an entire Colombian village, and a money laundering ring that extended from Las Vegas casinos to banks in the Cayman Islands. Perloman's management skills were formidable, his attention to detail legendary. And that was from California Magazine. The next one. Bruce Perlman was an entrepreneur of a different kind. He used his organizational genius and business acumen to build the biggest and most sophisticated marijuana smuggling empire in California history, San Diego Union. Next one, Joseph P. Russinelli, the U.S. Attorney of Northern District for Northern California, called his operation one of the largest and most audacious, the Miami Herald. Bruce Pearlman could give the CIA lessons on how to run an operation or a country, the Berkeley Monthly. So I quote those newspapers as to grab their attention. And then
Sure.
I say in this section in bold letters, after 9 years in prison and losing all the money I illegally made, I am now looking for a job, um, the position requiring me to, trying to fill out wait, so in this case, I was looking for a job. I did 2 resumes, one for an American job and one for a company that's working in Russia because I wanted to go to live in Russia and work, so when Lana got out of prison, she would join me there. So I would like a position requiring me to live and work in the Soviet Union. Trying to fill out a job application is somewhat preposterous under the circumstances, so I am submitting my own resume for with some of my qualifications for your consideration for a position with your firm, and then I titled it down here, "An Unusual Resume." And then the next page is a bunch of more quotes, you know, just sensational quotes from all the different newspapers and asked for a job. That was my resume. Alright?
And
So
what were some of your skills that you listed?
oh, just what the newspaper said, I
Ah,
could
okay.
alright, just they you know, um, okay, I go then I quote these, "A knack for organization, organizational genius, formidable management skills, attention to detail, sophisticated, audacious, and business acumen are all desirable attitudes for someone working in a company with a progressive, creative, and entrepreneurial corporate culture. Pioneering new ground in business business last great frontier, the USSR, is something I want to do as it fits my personality and work skills. So that was when I was pitching to get a job in Russia. But the same
And
resume
it's,
went
oh,
out.
by the way, my wife's a Russian spy, so let me in.
Exactly. All right. So, um, so that was those are the qualifications I listed.
Right, and where did you put that want ad?
Okay, so here's what happened. I was living with Michael in his basement, and so I made them, and right then a guy writes me, Joel Pimsler from the LA Times. Oh, no, no. I sent out a resume, a change of address, and a little card saying, here's
Yep,
my new address. I no longer in prison, and the address of Michael Harkin's house, his mom's house I lived in. And so I sent that out to everybody, including a bunch of reporters. So Joel Pimsler from the LA Times calls me up and says, Bruce, what are you up to? What are you doing? I said, well, I'm looking for a job. I made a resume. He goes, so send me the resume. So I sent him the resume, mailed it to him. He calls me back and goes, Bruce, I got to do a story on this. I go, what do you mean you got to do a story? He goes, let's do the interview. Let's plan the interview next week. No, got to do it now. I go, Joel, I'm going to go visit my mother. I haven't seen her in 5 years. Because she came and visited me when I was in prison, but
yeah,
not for the last 5
yeah.
years. And he goes, no, we got to do it today. Resume stories are hot right now. For some reason, resumes and jobs were very hot at that moment.
And this is what, 1992 or 91?
Um, this is 92.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, 92. Okay, so
okay.
he he so I said, okay, we'll do the interview. He says, you gotta do it before you go to Miami to visit your mom. Alright, so I do the interview. He calls me up. I answer all his questions. He's got a copy of the resume, and I'm now on the plane, and he says it'll be out in the Sunday newspaper. So I pick up the Sunday newspaper on the way to the air on the way to Miami. I grab a Sunday LA Times, big thick newspaper, and I'm on the airplane looking through it, and I go, "That's funny. There's no resume story here." There These did several stories, and so did a lot of reporters. It was always the day they said it came out. It always came out. It never didn't. And then I looked at the top, and it goes afternoon edition. I go, "Well, maybe there's a morning edition." I go, "What do I know? I've been in prison for 9 years." You know?
Right,
So,
right.
I land in Atlanta, right? That's to change planes. I get off the plane to get on the next plane, but I call my mom, and she goes, "Oh my god." I go, "What?" She goes, "Oh my god, you have been getting job interviews. I'm getting nonstop calls. They want you to interview you on Maury Povich on this channel. They want an Australia radio station wants to interview you. You got all kinds of people calling that want to hire you." I go, "Oh, I guess the resume story came out." What had happened, Joel put it out, and it goes out on the LA Wire service, and that gets like UPI, right? It gets picked up by
Sure.
all the newspapers. So the resume story literally went viral all over the world. So here's this is some examples of the resume story. All right, and I'll read some job hunter emphasizes drug skills. A resume is This resume is different, tells of marijuana sales. Smuggler touts past on resume. Ex drug smuggler touts job skills. A resume goes to pot. Drug pin
That's
ping.
hilarious.
That's a
So
good one.
tell us about the job offers. Tell us
Okay.
about some of the job offers that came in.
All right, so now I got about 200 job offers, all different kinds. I don't remember it all specifically, but the one that stuck was Rainforest Products. That was a Berkeley firm that made rainforest products that uses the Brazil nut in their cereal called Rainforest Cereal or Rainforest something, Rainforest Crunch maybe. And you had to preserve the rainforest because if you cut the rainforest down, the Brazil nut tree got cut down. So they made as much money harvesting Brazil nuts as they did clear cutting and selling the land, raising cattle for McDonald's. All right. which they were doing back there and destroying thousands of acres of rainforest. So here's preserving it. I like that. I'm an environmentalist. I was at Eco Commandos in high school. And so I said, yeah, so they made me their national sales manager. And I think we talked about this in episode 0 and episode 1. And I said to them one day, do you want me to use my background to get you the newspapers? Because I was good at getting the newspapers. And they go, yeah. I put them on the front page of 3 newspapers in 2 days. So all of a sudden, their business, everyone's knowing about this Rainforest Crunch or Rainforest Crisp, whatever it was. And of course, that helps. But then one of the partners said, we're about to get a deal with Safeway, and I don't think they would like the King of Pot being our national sales manager. So back off on the
Oh, wow.
your
Interesting.
well, he just killed billions of dollars of free publicity. Billions, because I would have kept it on forever. I call it a media blitz. I could
Sure.
have, once you get in the story keeps rolling. Radio stations, TV interviews.
Right. Stories about the stories. Right.
Right. I so I said, "You just killed my whole thing." Well, at that time, Jerry Rubin called me up and said, "Why don't you come work for me in Omnitrition? I'm making $60,000 a month doing network marketing. You basically network marketed $1 billion of marijuana. You come to
Right.
LA, run my training center. We'll do a national tour. We'll do the TV station in the morning. We'll do the radio in the afternoon, and we'll do the reporters at night. And we'll do a free." Now he's talking my language. A media blitz, free publicity. I mean, do you know what it's like to try? I've been on the front page of 3 or 4 newspapers. Do you know how much that would cost in column inches to pay for the front page of a newspaper?
A lot.
I
Yeah, a lot.
and here we
Yeah.
get every so I
So who's Jerry Rubin? Who tell everybody who Jerry Rubin is?
Okay, Jerry Rubin, for those that don't know, he was one of the Chicago 7 in Detroit back in the old days. I don't know what year they were having the Democratic
Is
National
he the
Convention.
Chicago 7 or the Detroit 7?
I'm sorry, the Chicago 7, you're right.
Right.
Huey Newton
Okay.
was one of them. It was the Chicago 8, but they took him out and made him to have a separate trial. It was ridiculous what they did. They actually had him gagged and mugged, so he couldn't talk, on the defense, because he would spout out, he wouldn't shut up. Alright, so anyway, so the Chicago 7 was accused of creating the riots in the Democratic National Convention in Detroit,
Hmm.
and, I think they all got acquitted, but they're all like there was a very, very famous case. So Jerry then was very famous. He knew how to use the media. He was brilliant, a brilliant strategy guy. And I didn't learn a lot of my media skills from him, but I learned some extra skills from him. And I learned a
Right.
way of looking at things uniquely because he was a freaking genius. And so so he's making $60,000 a month by signing people up to sell vitamins. Traditional network marketing, you were making 100,000 a month, weren't you? In Hello World.
Yeah.
All right. So, um, and I was good at that, so I came down and ran his training centers. And a training center this is important because it tells you what I did later in my own companies. A training center, you have a meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays. You have a business opportunity meeting, which you describe the business opportunity, alright? And then on Saturdays, you have a business opportunity and a 3 or 4-hour training to those people that wanna do the business, and now you train them on this vitamin, on that vitamin, this technique, how to do three-way calls, how to do cold calls, how to do warm calls. It's training, alright? So biz op, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturday, all-day training on Saturday after the biz op. Alright, so he had a training center, and I ran that training center for about a year, and I, lived it with him for 6 months in his apartment. I
Right.
and,
So what's that like? I mean, you're in prison one day, the next day you're running these training centers where people are looking to you for advice.
um, well, I was the fastest growing the company's name was Omnitrition. I think it's still around today. Uh, but, I was the fastest growing Omnitrition distributor for the first 6 months. You know, um
And because of the availability to press or because you're just a natural marketer sales guy?
I'm a natural marketing sales guy, and I believe in nutrition. Remember, a health food nut. I grew
Yeah,
my own
yeah,
vegetables growing up,
right.
so that was my wheelhouse. To this day, nutrition is my wheelhouse, or part of it.
Yeah,
I'm building a permaculture food forest in my yard. I get it
nice,
this morning. Nicole went out, got kale and a couple other things in her garden, and made juice. And I had fresh juice
nice,
this morning.
nice,
So,
nice.
so just like rainforest products hit me because it was a healthy product and saved the rainforest, Nutrition was a healthy product and it was network marketing. And, a lot of people follow you if they believe you. Well, I grew up,
Yeah,
my word is my bond. People know that. I've demonstrated that over and over again, not just saying it, but proving it with Joe Chagra's
yeah,
lighters, 31 years later, returning them with, I'll get into the barter company where I had phone cards that went bad. 7 years later, I replaced $7 million of phone cards, so, you know, and that that you know, my enthusiasm is contagious, all right? I'm excited about certain things, so I was excited about nutrition, and I grew it real big. So, um, and
well, here's what we're gonna do, Bruce. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about your business ventures, next week. All right. So, and I just want to end with, um, what was the media blitz like from the resume? I mean, I know you did a couple talk shows and a couple, national things. What was that like from, prisoner to now star?
Well, I had been in a lot of newspaper articles previous to that. So getting my name in the front page of the newspaper, I got hundreds of articles from the smuggling days. And I used to call the newspapers up and say, "You wanted to interview me?" And then I would say, I would make up a story, say, "I took advantage of these poor, desperate fishermen, and made them smuggle, and they would have never done that." And so that I was trying to cut them off and help them out, cut them, and it worked. It actually worked.
Right.
And so
Right.
I was used to that. So that was old news. It was nothing but a business thing. How many newspapers can you get into? Because it is free publicity. But I do want to, before we end, like you say, if you want Bruce
But wait, there's more. Right.
there's one thing I did. When I got out of prison, was it crack cocaine was around. Right at the end,
Yeah.
when I was starting to at the end last couple of years, all these prisoners started coming in that were crackheads. Mostly now crack is usually a state felony, but if you get arrested in Washington, D.C., you get one to a federal institution because that's not a state, that's a federal
Yeah.
jurisdiction. So all these
Yeah.
crackheads started coming in. I go, "What the hell?" That was, look, I didn't even deal cocaine. Alright, and the crack was no good, nothing redeeming about crack. So I teamed up with the FBI agent who arrested me, who is now working on, something for the state for anti-drug task force, and we went around and we did anti-drug talks, a lot. And this one that I'm holding up is titled "Lessons Learned." Alright, and this is me at a school in a 5th grade class doing, a talk to the 5th graders. I went to, the Boys Ranch, I went to the Rotary Club, I went to women in law enforcement, and I gave it to church youth groups, and Chuck and I would go and do drug talks because, again, I didn't tell them, "Don't smoke pot," you know? I would and don't do drugs. I would tell them the consequences of doing drugs, not pot, and I would say, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, if it feels good, I look around and go, "Can you imagine me telling me that it feels good, to do drugs?" But here's what ends up happening. Anybody know anybody who overdosed? Now with crack, there's a lot of that. So it was shocking
Yeah.
to me that over 50% of the hands was raised, that people knew someone
Yeah.
that overdosed. So I did that for a while. Again, free publicity, but publicity for a good cause, and again,
Yeah, I find it quite ironic that, you traveled with the FBI guy that caught you, right? And did these anti-drug talks. That's hilarious.
yeah, well, it was something good to do. We never got
Yeah.
paid. It was just sort of like, good to do. And, alright, so with that, that's, I think, pretty much the last story about that before we get into some of the businesses that I got into after prison.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, fascinating stuff, certainly about education and then using that education the best way you can to get yourself a job, and certainly manipulating and using the media and you've become a king of that over the years as well. So we'll see you next week, where we tell more stories on how Bruce Perloin became the King of Pot. My name's Todd Dankin, and this is Becoming the King of Pot. We'll see you next time.